Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sphere of Being. And as I say, each time I introduce these episodes, I say this is to make sure that as business leaders, we keep ourselves at the optimum that we can be so that we can actually give a heart-centered approach to everything that we do up, because everything where we're showing up, it has a knock-on effect. And if we are there at the A game, then we know that it's going to cascade and permeate in a good way throughout our environment. And today I have a wonderful special guest. He is a super connector. He is somebody that brings meaningful connections in business to life for the longer term, not just for short-term gain, but for absolutely beautiful, deep relationships between people. He is also a net zero ambassador and is into all things net zero, sustainability, and basically making sure that we have a world that is fit for purpose for generations to come. So what a wonderful, wonderful message that he's giving to the world. Jay Blake, wonderful to have you on the show.
Good morning, and a real pleasure to join you this morning. It's great to see you, and I'm really honored to be able to spend a little bit of time with you, your viewers, and your listeners in whatever way people are engaging with this today. So thank you for having me.
Lovely. And I want to dive straight in, Jay,
Sure.
because what does a super connector do?
I spend my life building relationships. So for me, business is about relationships. When I look back over my career, I've always been about making connections and building relationships. I spent a lot of my time connecting in order to be able to resolve technical issues. So I was a translator, as I used to describe it. So I had high-powered people who didn't understand technology, and I had technical geeks who didn't understand how to communicate with people of that ilk. And I was able to be that go-between. And so I've always taken that whole concept of relationships being at the heart of business. And all I do now is really simple. I find people who have a need and I help them to build those connections that they need. So like I like to say, either you teach people to fish or you fish on their behalf. And I have clients for whom I do both.
And thinking about this relationship, very much centered to the
Hmm,
theme of this podcast with a heart-centered approach to leadership. When you have somebody in business who is, we're all looking to grow and
of
develop our
course.
business to create abundance and also value to our clients and to ourselves and our ecosystems. What would you say are the biggest no-nos in having these interactions with fellow business people with the aim of growing, developing business? What would you say don't do, first of all?
I would say that I think the key don't is self-focus because it is so easy to be self-focused. It is so easy to look at what is our goal? What do I need out of this? What is in it for me? My experience is the more we look at what is in it for them, the more we get back by virtue of how the world works. And so being entirely self-focused can so often be the big no-no.
And where we're seeing self-focus, people say, well, yeah, but I've got a product and a service, and I've got to let people know about that. Could you go into a little bit more
Of
detail
course.
as to what that means about not being so self-focused?
Absolutely. It's nothing to do with your product. It's absolutely nothing to do with your product. It's everything to do with finding the right person for whom your product or your service meets a need. Once you've got a real clear understanding of what their situation is, and you're talking their language into their place where they're hurting, or their place where they've got an aspiration for what it is that they need, it's then and only then that you get the permission and the privilege to explain how what it is that you do makes that difference. So once you understand what it is they're looking for, who in my case, once I understand who are the valuable connections for them, what is going to take them from where they are today to where they want to be next week, next month, next year. Once I understand that, only then do I get the privilege to say, do you know what? I've got people in my little black book or people that I know already. or I can see the type of people that you need to be connected with, and I can work on your behalf with you and for you to develop those answers so that you can then build and get to that place you want to be. But if I walk into the room and just say, this is me, this is why you need to buy me, nobody cares. Most people, and it's not all, but most people are interested in what's in it for them.
And so, thinking about what you do, and
Hmm.
as you said, you've got your network, your little black book, as it were, and I'm sure it's not that little. I'm sure it's got lots and lots of different people. What do you do with your clients to help them to understand who could potentially be those people that have a need for what they do and are at the stage within their business that actually the timing is appropriate to actually have a chat about it?
That's a really and the second half of that question is the most interesting for me in one sense, because again, we come back to looking at life as a long-term thing. So for me, there's often that moment of realization within a client where I'm explaining that we may not be talking to the people who are going to buy today. But by starting a relationship today, we get the opportunity to have the relationship with people so that when they're ready tomorrow, whenever tomorrow is, they will come to us. And because that trust is built, that understanding of how we deliver is built. And so it's often that question of listening and sitting down and spending that time to understand who they are and what it is about their business that would be of use to the people that I'm then going to connect them with. And that's what's key. It's about spending the time on walking a mile in their shoes so that I know enough about them to be able to explain.
And are there any particular sectors, Jay, that you would really say, yes, they're your sweet spot? Or would you say that with your breadth of experience, you can pretty much cover most sectors?
I love the question I'm so often asked under the and while we're talking about kind of why people would choose to work with me, they often say, "Do you not need to know everything about my business?" And I use the same story every time, and I say, "Well, run with me through an example. Let me run an example by you. So, if you sell widgets." And these widgets have certain things that they can do. And I go and meet a potential widget purchaser, and the purchaser says, what is this detail about the widget? Now, if I know everything about your business, what's going to happen next? And generally they'll respond and say, well, you know everything about my business. You'll tell them what the widget does. And they say, yeah, it's brilliant, because they'll then drive off from that meeting and they'll know the answer to their question. And I say, okay, now let me paint you another scenario. Because you see, I don't know everything about your widgets. And they say, yes, that's what I'm worried about. And I go, okay, but run through the story with me. So they say to me, what's XYZ specific detail about your widget? And you go, that's a really good question. Are you in the office at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon? And they say, absolutely. Perfect. I'll ring you at 2 o'clock this tomorrow and we can have a conversation. Now, how do they feel at 2:15 when I have rung them, as I said I would, and said, you asked this great question about the widgets. This is the answer to your question. And here's a couple of other details I thought might be useful. Now, how do they feel? And compare that to how they felt when I was able to answer their question immediately. Because actually, I've built trust. I've done what I've said I will do. I've answered their question and I've spoken to them a second time. So actually, they are far more empowered. They are feeling far stronger about the relationship that they have because we've spoken a couple of times than because I need to know everything about your business. So I don't need to know everything. I just need to have a listening ear and a willingness to follow through on what I've said so that they can then build that relationship onwards from there.
And so, with this multiple approach, you've mentioned a couple of things that you're building trust, you're building the awareness, you've
Mhm.
come back and you've said who you're saying you are. What is your message to people out there with regards to perceived value?
But see, uh, it's like beauty, it is in the eye of the beholder. So it's again about taking the time. It's about caring enough to hear, to listen, and to understand. Because for one person, what it is that they need from a product, what it is that they will do for them, how it will make them feel, is entirely different from how another person will use that very same product. And so if I'm interested in the product only from my point of view, or the service from my point of view, and how I see it delivering, actually, it may be entirely different for somebody else. So it's always about getting into the shoes of the person who's listening and spending that time making that deep connection. Trust, as I say to people, it's my drug of choice. And I adore building that trust hard and building that trust fast. And I have a privilege of doing that. I love getting into that place of trust. If I had a pound for everybody who said, Jay, I've never told anybody this before, I wouldn't need to work. And I love that pleasurable position of complete trust. And you have to be willing to give it to get it.
I love that. And I'm just going to actually say something here to the audience that's listening. Now, this is a very, really deep proposition that we're talking about is actually perception. And so, Jay, I'm just going to play a little exercise with you, if I may. If I said, think of a chicken. Now, what did you think of when you're thinking of a chicken? Just describe what you're thinking.
Something white and oval and going to become that thing that is the chicken.
So you're thinking of an egg.
Mm.
Yes. Now, when I think of a chicken, I think of a fluffy bird.
Mm-hmm.
When other people think of a chicken, they may be thinking of a roast chicken.
Yeah, absolutely.
They may be thinking of a field or a group of chickens. And we're all right
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
that's all chicken style stuff.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if I went in and talked to you about the roast dinner and you were
Yeah.
thinking of an egg,
Yeah.
that's the thing, isn't it? And I think that's
Completely.
what you're getting at is that
Absolutely.
with that trust element, where people feel, because trust means that you are safe, you feel
Yes.
safe.
Yeah. Providing a safe space.
Yep. It's just to help people to get this. And it took a long time for me to understand what putting your person that you're speaking with into that safe space.
Absolutely.
And safety means that you trust and that you're coming at it from the point of view, I might be thinking then of how chickens hatch, because
Mm.
you've described to me an egg which is going to have a chicken, not an egg which is going to make your breakfast.
Absolutely. And the reality is by producing the safety, you can have trust. Without the safety, there is no trust. So safety is that first step on that journey. It's making people feel safe, then they can trust. And once they trust, they can then do business.
And so, with regards to the processes that you use in your business,
Hmm.
if somebody were to say, Jay, this all sounds absolutely fantastic, just describe to us what you do for your clients to get them the end result that you've both agreed upon.
And the reality is that varies from client to client based on what their needs are. In general terms, what that means is people engage my services on a timely basis. So it's not that I sell my time; it is just that it's an easy way of kind of agreeing how we work. And again, it's not on a day of the month basis, but people generally engage my services for a number of days per month. But what I always say to my clients is you pay for a number of days and you get all of my time. What I mean by that is that you're always in the back of my mind. So whenever I'm out having a conversation with somebody as a client, you're in the back of my mind. So I'm at an event and somebody is talking about whatever it is that you need. So if I had a video production client and I'm out talking to somebody else who happens to be in the building trade, then the video stuff is still in my back of my mind. And if I hear somebody asking questions of that ilk, then I can note that and follow that up when I'm spending my time working with you. So the joys of the way in which that I work means that I'm always keeping my ears out for making connections. Another way I talk about myself is being a signpost. I love it when people pick up the phone and say, Jay, I need a something in somewhere. And often, if I don't know that, and often I do, but if I don't, then there'll be somebody in my close circle that I trust enough to go, yeah, this has been recommended to me. I'm happy to pass that recommendation on to you.
And so that's interesting because how do you manage to keep the number of clients that you have at any one time in the forefront of your mind so that, as you say, by definition, you are a super connector. It's almost like you're a supercomputer. How do you make sure that you think, oh, yes, this would suit this client, this would suit that client? Because it sounds like there's quite a
The,
lot going on.
yeah, and some of that is systemic, and some of that is just the way I'm gifted that my brain works. So yeah, there's that combination of systems that enable me to make sure that everybody's getting what they need out of it, but also of just the fact that my brain naturally makes those connections.
And with regards to people going out there and communicating on LinkedIn, getting people connecting with them, how would you help people to optimize existing connections that they would have within their network?
The joy of the world we are now in is that we are in a world that is that can feel very connected, but actually can feel very isolated as well. It's so important. We forget the reason that the thing we all carry around in our pockets is called a phone. When was the last time you made a phone call? When was the last time you just picked up the phone to somebody who is on your list and just asked them how they are, asked them what was going on in their life, made that connection? And actually, even if we just said, you know what, we're going to ring one person a week. If that sounds like a lot, how about one person a fortnight? If that sounds like a lot, come on, you can do one person a month and just pick up the phone and say, I'm not ringing for any purpose. I'm just calling to see how you're doing. And what you suddenly discover is serendipity starts to play a part. I always remember a phone call I made a couple of years ago now. I phoned a friend of mine who'd had a knee operation. I rang him up and I said, how's your knee? And at the end of that conversation, I walked away with a 3-month contract to support him because he had an operation of a different sort coming up that week. And he said, Jay, we need to talk. And that 3 months became 15. So pick up the phone, folks. You never, ever know what will come from it.
I love that because actually, with today's texting and LinkedIn messaging and all of the stuff, the WhatsApps that we have involved with, etc., and all of the AI that goes around, people actually now are like, my phone never rings.
No, nobody,
And people are
people
much
don't.
more likely to pick up the phone because it's a novelty.
It's the same as another somebody else that I have the privilege of recommending. They send what I describe as lumpy mail, so they send things through the post. It's find how do we find a way to be seen? And I'm blessed. You will have seen from my LinkedIn profile, I have an assistance dog. Hope travels with me everywhere. And I say to clients, actually, if you need somebody to go to an exhibition on your behalf, there is nobody better than me. And it's really simple because I can go to an exhibition where there will be 1,200 visitors, 2,000 visitors, however many there are. And I can strike up a conversation with the person on the stand and say, can I give you a call next week? Never much more than that, because they are there to sell to me. It's not about me going to sell to them. And they generally will say, yes, that's fine. So I ring them up the next week and they say, great, how can I help? And I said, well, it was lovely to see you at the Excel Center last week. And they go, yeah, we saw hundreds of people at the Excel Center. Yeah, I was the guy with the dog. Ah,
Yeah.
immediately straight through. So again, just another of the ways that I work with my clients is that they will have, we all have more events than we can be at. it's just the nature of the world we're in. So if there's an event that you want your business to be having a look around or making connections with, that's a great way of me working with clients, is I will go and I'll spend a day on my client's behalf, wandering around, making connections, and then following those up afterwards.
And this is very interesting because we can only be still at the moment anyway, one place and one
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah.
And to have that as a fractional sales of person almost, not selling, but making the
Mm.
connections, which, I've
Connection builder.
always doing
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
getting more people into the database and then being able to do that and then following up.
Mm.
Because one of the big things is that you get the list and then you think, I've got no time to contact them. And
Yeah.
all of those business cards or whatever you've done, if it's on the phone,
Yeah.
all of a sudden just don't get the value
Mm.
from them.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. And then how far down the process do you actually go for your clients in relationship building and taking it to perhaps the sales side?
I take it as far as they sell what they do, generally speaking. There are a couple of exceptions. So I've had my own video production company and various other things. So there are areas where it is easier for me to take that further through that process. And again, it very much depends on the client. Every client is different. And some clients, they are simply wanting to be introduced so that they can have the conversations. Others want me to take that further and take that further down the line so that they're then speaking to people who are actually wanting to buy at this point. It just depends what it is exactly that the client is looking for. And as always, with the way I operate with the people that I talk to, it's about saying, okay, well, how can I utilize my skills best and mesh those alongside and next to yours so that you're getting the best value from working together. Because that's what it's about. It's about working together. It's not a box that I'm handing over. It's a partnership.
And a lot of people, I'm an introvert by nature. I have learned over the years how to be comfortable to actually speak to strangers and be in rooms with people and do the merging and the mingling and the networking. I wouldn't say it's my default position, but I can do it
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
But what I'm hearing from you is if somebody is in a situation where they're thinking, you know what, this is so outside my comfort zone, I really don't want to be in a situation where I'm walking around and talking to strangers. It just isn't something that I feel comfortable with. From what I'm hearing, this is something that is a value service that you provide for those people because you can actually be the outward facing person in that regard for
absolutely.
them.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. And I think it's one more thing than that. So yes, it's for those who are uncomfortable. It's also for those who, by virtue of their business, their time is more valuably spent doing something else. So it may be that they go, do you know what? I could. I don't particularly mind going out and chatting to people and talking about what I do, but actually there is this part of this part of it that my skills are needed for, that if I'm not doing, there isn't somebody else that I can get to do it instead. A classic example of that, where I think we're going to come to mention that at some point, but I have the privilege of getting married next week, and one of the exciting things that I'm coming back from our honeymoon to is that we're setting up a payroll admin solutions organization. So my my wife to be is a passionate payroll specialist, and she's not at all interested in going out and talking to people. Her skills are getting all of the numbers right and making that all work. So it's a great way for us to work together. That effectively she will be part of my client network. In that I will be speaking to accountants and those sorts of people about the work that she can do, so that they're doing what they do best. So they're able to focus on the accounting parts of the accountancy world where they've got the skills. And it appears from the conversations I've had thus far that the payroll side of things just isn't part of what they like doing. So that's another exciting part of my journey and my story.
Yes, and so from that perspective, it sounds like you can very easily move it in from an organization's perspective and think about what the type of people that they want to be in front of, etc.
Exactly.
From a cultural perspective, how can you be at one with the organization's culture so that there isn't a disconnect from the people that you meet and how you are as a person to the person then that's going to be driving that relationship through from the sales perspective?
We're back to trust. We're back to spending that time, and I work with people that I like to work with, and I choose who I work with quite carefully, primarily because I don't have an unlimited amount of time. So for me, it's always about working with the right people who have an understanding, because this isn't a quick sales turnaround process. The very shortest I've ever worked with a client has been 3 months. But generally, we start at 6 months and over in terms of the process because this is about relationship building. This isn't about I've got a hole in my sales pipeline and I need somebody to fill it next week. This is about actually I'm wanting to build meaningful, valuable, long-term relationships with the right people for my business. And Jay is going to start those and develop those and help those grow because it isn't always just finding new folk. Sometimes it's looking at existing contacts and reaching out where people haven't been in touch for some time and helping those to grow. So there is both sides of that relationship journey. And you're right, it's got to be the right culture. It's got to be the right feel. And I think I'm sufficiently there's something about my approach and there's something about a client's approach that we both sides will very quickly feel either yes, this is going to work, or actually we need a different solution. And I don't get desperately upset if we discover that we need a different solution, but we always find that out before we've got to that point of agreeing an approach.
Fabulous. I love the way in which, again, your steady manner, you're obviously incredibly knowledgeable, and this isn't your first rodeo. You've done it many, many times on clients'
Mm.
behalf as well. So people know that they're in safe hands with you
Absolutely.
and that you will help to engender those relationships to bring about the results that people are looking for. And also, from that follow-up perspective you mentioned, it's so important
Mm.
not to just go in on a once only basis and keep on doing new. It's developing the people that you've already got. And that can start to become very unwieldy as your network grows because it's like, well, how do I meaningfully engage people in conversations when actually I haven't got the time to keep on following up as I should do? So, from what you're saying, that
Mm.
sounds like a service that people could think, oh, that's a really useful added value service to what we're already doing.
There's a lovely quote, and I love it to pieces. You may have heard of it, but there's a quote that says, "Knock, and the door will be opened unto you. Seek, and you will find. Ask, and it will be given to you." And what I love about that quote is that it's misquoted, and that actually, when you look back at how it was written originally, it is knock and keep on knocking, and the door will be open to you. Seek and keep on seeking, and you will find. Ask and keep on asking. And as I say to people, it's the keeping on that makes the difference. That first knock, that first seek, that first ask may not be what gets that answer, that request, that prayer answered. But actually, as we keep on knocking, as we keep on seeking, as we keep on asking, that's when the gold comes. That's when it changes.
Beautiful. And with that, how can people get hold of you? Because I want people to be knocking on your door
That's
and
really
saying,
kind. Well,
how can they chat with you?
there's a contact number and an email address. So my phone number is over my shoulder. My email address is really quite simple now. So if you can email me at j@jblake.uk. The website is being currently updated. So by the time this is up, I'm sure it'll be live and kicking because I've broadened what it is that I'm doing. I used to be very specific just in that zero, but I've broadened that now so that the jblake.uk will give you the breadth of everything that I'm up to. So do come and check me out. Find me there. I'm on LinkedIn. And I'm also on all of the other social channels. So yeah, really look forward to having a chat. And let's have a cup of coffee. Whether that's virtually or in person. I'd love to hear your story and see how we might be able to make a real difference by building relationships on your behalf.
Wonderful. And just lastly, can you give one top tip that you would give to people about building successful business relationships?
Be kind. Be kind. I think there is so little kindness that actually it stands out, and we all think we're being it, but actually, if we take that moment and be kind and reach out, it'll make the world a much nicer place, and that's what we all need.
Fabulous. I love that. So everybody, please do be in touch with Jay. He's such a lovely, humble man, wealth of experience, hides a lot underneath the surface. And actually, when you get to know him, it's just a wealth of information and insight that he can bring to the business. So it's been an absolute privilege, Jay, to have you on the show.
Lovely to
Thank you
be
so
with you.
much for coming. Okay, and everybody, you know what? Having delegating sometimes is so important in our business because we can seem to be caught up in everything and start to get a little bit overwhelmed, and that's not a great place to be. So some really strategic outsourcing can make all the difference to the way that
Absolutely.
we can show up into our business as well. So until next time, like, subscribe, comment, share. It's always wonderful to make sure that this can reach as many people as possible. It's absolutely wonderful. And thank you so much for your continued support. Until next time, carry on caring, everyone. Bye now.